Sunday. It's been raining on and off, and a bit tired because we were woken up at about 5 o'clock this morning by an earthquake, which seems to have woken up half the country. It wasn't too bad, not too much fell down or anything, so that was okay. So this morning I've been cleaning up this little Smith's gauge. This is one of the easiest restorations of these things I think I've ever done. It's really clean. The only thing wrong with it was the input was all gummed up, so I soaked it in some Kroil, I think it is, but this way up. So I just put a few drops down on that input shaft and left it sitting like that. That's what's over the little container, and worked it backwards and forwards. I find a little piece of square brass tubing, something like this, is good for turning the little input, and it didn't take much. That cleaned that up fine. Even the rubber seal around the little chrome ring is in good condition. This is the little black masking thing that the glass sits in. The glass is in the ultrasonic cleaner, and the housing is in some evaporust. This evaporust is getting close to done, I think, once it goes all black like that. So I'll give that a touch of paint. I reset this back to 0, which is easy. There's nothing to stop you doing that. You just rotate the little drums, and just a really gentle wipe down with a cotton bud on the face, and it's in really nice condition. So I'm hoping that'll be good for the Velocette. I'm doing more on the body. I have trimmed these panels to fit, so I'm going to weld those today, hopefully, although my acetylene is almost run out. I'll see how far I get, and need to clean some space here so I can do the welding. Hopefully it doesn't rain, because I prefer to have the doors open when I'm doing that sort of thing, because of fumes and stuff like that. So I need to touch up a few welds on here as well. Just following on from what I say about doing just a little bit every day. Doesn't have to be a lot. This is the little Smith's speedometer. I have cleaned and painted the outer casing and the little mounting bracket. I'll leave those to dry overnight, and then tomorrow I should be able to reassemble that. It's the cleanest one of these I've ever seen. It's not brand new, but it's pretty good. Doing something a little different tonight. Just taking a break from the Riley. I'm waiting for the flux to arrive. So I thought I'd have a look at the crank on the Velocette, because I've got big end wear in it, so I need to fix the big end bearings, which means pulling the crank apart. And I didn't start filming this. I just came out and started playing with it, but I suddenly remembered I should film some of this, and this is where I've got up to. So this is a Mark II crank, and I believe it's the later kind. It's sort of between the Mark I and up to 1955. They kept changing the arrangement, but you can measure the width of the bearings. These are 11/32 wide, I think it is. Yeah, which is up to which was from 1955. So this bike is a real bitzer, because I think it was advertised as a 52, 53 Mark II. The engine seems to be later. But anyway, I've managed to ding the corner of that, which isn't great, but I can file that off. I've managed to get the journals off, the bearing things. This is the thrust washer, and you can see the wear on the edge of that. Those are available apparently. These are the journals and the oil pump drive, and that's the little pin that sort of holds it all together. So they all slide down on here. To get those off, I used a puller like this. That's how I've managed to nick just that corner of that taper this wasn't centered. That should be fine. I'll just file that off to make that smooth. I think that'll be all right. And then to get the crank apart, this is quite tricky, and my setup here is pretty wobbly, but I've managed to get the first one out. I did use heat to help. There is a little dowel pin that's in there that helps guide everything back into the same place, and you can see I should now be able to get that off. So that's the big end bearing inside there. Now I believe that this is a Preston sort of shell that the bearing goes around. I need to measure that. This is another problem, is I don't have like a micrometer big enough to go over that. The biggest one I've got only goes up to 1 inch, and this is bigger than that, I think. So I may have to get something there. But what I'll try and do now is get the other pin out. Of course, there's a special tool for this. There's a service tool. But I've managed to kind of cobble something together. This is all pretty wobbly, but I've measured it all up. Everything is flat and correct. What you have to do is you need to support it around where you're pushing the pin out, of course. So I came up with this, which I can't really do with one hand. So that obviously supports half of it. The actual service tool is kind of a metal box with a flat plate on the top, hardened plate apparently. Or else this bit is the bit that needs to be the hardened plate, because you need to support it here. So it's got little notches. You can sort of see them there. I've got another piece of steel which went flying, and that goes under the other side, and I sort of measured all of this up, and that does support it at the right height so that this is parallel and you can push it out. And then I just used a socket on there to push that through, but I heated this up as well just to make it a bit easier. Even then, I hate doing things like this. It's terrifying, especially with this at face height. I should probably move it onto the floor, in which case it would probably end up being at sort of groin height. So I don't know if this is any better. You can see my first few attempts before I used a bit of heat actually bent this, and this is 6mm thick, 5mm thick steel. But the heat definitely helped, and I was able to push that apart. So I'm going to try and get the second one out now, and then we can have a look at what we've got. So basically the setup is something like this. You can see how it's all supported. Once the pressure goes on there, that stays flat and this stays parallel. And I sort of put the towel over it, around it, just in case any of these decide they're going to ping out. But this does work. It's a bit wobbly, but I should be able to get the second one out. I'll remove the socket, heat this up, and then push it out. Decided this is just getting a bit too dodgy after I did have something slip. You can see what it's done to the steel, and everything went flying. 1, 2, 3 blocks went flying, and yeah, I decided no, that's too risky. So I did make a more suitable plate to go under this end, and even now I can't get it to come loose. My whole press starts bending and moving, and everything just feels really unsafe. So I've got a little bit of pressure on it at the moment. I might just leave it sitting like that overnight, see if that helps. But yeah, I don't know how else I could do this. I can't do this here. I would have to take it to an engineering shop somewhere who's got a decent press and a decent setup. This just isn't strong enough. It says it's rated to 12 tons. It isn't. The bottle jack might be, but the actual press, no way, nowhere near. So, you know, things start flexing, and no, it's just not nice, not safe at all. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. I did put a little bit of penetrating fluid around it. I don't think that's going to do anything. I'll leave it sitting there with pressure on it overnight, see if that helps, but I think that's as far as I can go for now. Like I say, I can't even accurately measure things at the moment, so yeah, I think that's where I have to stop. Thought before I go in, I'll give this one more try. After it's been sitting there with a bit of pressure on it, you can see how I made a more suitably shaped plate to sit underneath the counterbalance webs there, and that did it. I just gave it a few pumps and it's mostly off now. I think if I gently knock that with a soft hammer, that should come apart. I also took out the little end bushing because those are completely knackered. You can see on that one it's almost completely gone. So that's good. I was getting a bit worried there. Just move my well-deserved beer. So this is all apart. I'm going to clean everything up, but I'll do it bit by bit so I don't lose the markings on them. I just labeled the sides A and B, and after I got it apart I noticed that this this journal here is actually marked B. It's engraved on it. So I gave it a quick hit with a wire brush. This has obviously been sitting because there was surface rust on it. You can see there and there. So I'll clean all of that up as best I can. That little key there is a little bit knackered, but should be okay. And you can sort of feel where the pins have come out, where it was kind of galling. I can feel little marks in there, which is why it was sticking together so well, I guess. The good thing is it's got these the little dowel pins, which means it'll go back exactly in the right place. So I need to measure these, make sure they're within tolerance and not oval. I'm hoping that's the case. These big ends don't look too bad, but apparently I can order the material to make new ones of these, or you can make them yourself from some sort of bronze type bushing material. I'd need to look up exactly what the right things are. There are little grooves in it, I guess, for the oil. All the little oil passages seem to be clear and free, which is good. So obviously all of those have to line up. There's little holes there. Like I say, I'm going to give everything a really good clean. I can tell because of the rust patterns which side is which. So I think all of this will just go through the ultrasonic cleaner, make sure it's all perfectly clean. I'll need new little end bushes as well. And I'm hoping I can just get away with big end bushes. The other thing, of course, is I'll need new thrust washer. There's definitely, you can see it, it's can't quite feel it. There's just a slight ridge there. You can sort of just catch it, but that'll be something I need to get. Interestingly, this little pin that sort of holds all of these together was loose. I was actually just able to pull that out with my fingers. So some bits are really loose, other bits were super tight. But no, I'm really pleased with that. That's a good place to finish up tonight. And update on the Velocette. I think I'd mentioned that I'd managed to get the crank apart. That ended up being quite scary. At one point, bits went flying everywhere. It takes a lot of force to get those that crank apart. You can see it's just deformed that steel. Not helped by the fact that my cheap Chinese press here is a bit wobbly. So I've made these up as spacers, which kind of helps hold this a bit more level. Stop it rocking, which helps. I'm not sure what's out. I think it's these holes. So I'm not sure the best way to fix that. But I got it all apart. This is the thrust bearing. You can see the wear on it. So that causes the crank to move forwards and backwards. So when I reassemble it, I'll use a new one of those. I did measure the play in the big ends here, and on one side it was about 4 thou, and on the other it was 3.5, which is way too much. Should be basically nothing. And I found out these, reading through the service manuals and things, these letters on here, you can sort of see that B maybe. There's a matching B on the pin. That's because these this surface here is pressed on, so those letters show the tolerances. So in the factory they could push on, they could match them up, and they would be a nice tight fit. I've ordered a 1 to 2 inch micrometer because I've only got a 1 inch one, and this is bigger than that. So once that arrives, I can measure these to see what the tolerances are. But what I'm really interested in is if they're still round. If they're still round, I can make new big end bearings to fit. That seems to be what people do. I believe the club sells the right material to make these. This is an original one. It's actually, pretty sure it's split. There's a, I thought there was a line somewhere. The only problem I'm going to have is, obviously then I'd need to bore them out, but that's not going to work on a little lathe. It might only be a little engine, but it's still too big to fit on my lathe. I do have the mill. I've never had much luck with boring heads, and I'd have to make some sort of fixture for this to hold this down, to be able to bore it out accurately. I'm not sure what I'm going to do there. The rest of it all cleaned up fine. The main bearings are good. They're not worn at all, which is really good. So I've checked all of those and all of the different bearings in the housing, so I can reuse those. I also took apart somewhere, this is the starter quadrant. I'll need to replace that. That's pretty worn. I don't think this is too bad though. So, but I believe the club is making those new again now. And in order to go through and figure out all the parts I need, I found out that I've got the service manual. This is the right service manual, but I've only had this printed copy. Came with the bike. I found out that in the UK, the National Motorcycle Museum actually sell copies of the manuals online as PDF copies, which is awesome because I paid for the service manual and the parts manual specifically for the engine I've got. Because I'm pretty sure this engine is, it may be slightly later than the body, I'm not sure. It should be a 52, 53. But this is the parts manual for that engine. I did print it out, but my printer is running out of toner, so I've had to order more toner. But with this, I can now get all the correct parts for this engine. And I also got a PDF copy of the service manual because that's really useful. I think it was about £12 for the service manual and £10, I think, for the parts list. I'm pretty sure the spares sell these as well, but I don't know if they do them as PDF downloads. So it was just nice and quick and simple, and now I've got copies of them and I can print them out. So I still need to go through, figure out all the parts I need. Looking at the cylinder heads, somebody reassembled this engine without the clips and the ends of the gudgeon pins, I think, and you can see there are massive score marks in there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but exactly 1/2 inch apart, it's the corners of the conrods, and that's a very deep score. So I either need to get new cylinder heads, barrels rather, cylinders. I need cylinder heads as well because I've got a mismatched pair, and obviously those are going to be expensive coming from the UK because they're heavy. So I may find out if it's worth getting these sleeved. There is a company in New Zealand that can do re-sleeving of things like this, I believe. They do modern motorcycles, and they do lining of some of the exotic, is it Nikasil, various exotic cylinder liners, but they say they do cast iron as well. So I might get in touch with them, see if it's cheaper just to get these sleeved and bored out. But I believe to do that, I'll need to get the pistons first, so that when I can, if they can do it, I would send it all the way to them and they would sleeve it and then bore it to fit the pistons that I have. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do there. I cleaned up this. This was pretty rusty. Just gave this a good clean. This is the this is actually the gear lever housing. There's a little gate. This is what I mean about the cylinder heads. You can see this one is smaller. So this would have been off a 149cc engine, I believe. This is the later one. I believe the spares have these anyway, cylinder heads. I've got one good one. So I still need to do that. Sit down, actually go through the parts and figure out what I need. But that's where I'm at with the Velocette currently.